Hello, boys and girls of Credit Union Land, and welcome to the 11th episode of the CUInsight Experience. My name is Randy Smith. I am one of the co-founders and the publisher of CUInsight.com, and it is my job on the show to have conversations with the best and the brightest of the credit union community. I get to pick their brains and hopefully find a few nuggets we can all learn from. My guest today is Mr. Doug Leighton. He is the SVP of Community Accounts at Visa. My guess is you've seen Doug and the Visa logo everywhere the past few years. He is a big fan of the credit union community, and Visa has been showing their support. There was so much that I wanted to talk to Doug about, the pace of change in payments and fintechs, what top of wallet means for credit unions in today's world. And then even from that, we switched gears to something I know that he's passionate about from past conversations, and that's talent development and bringing young people into the financial services space. Before diving into the leadership and the life hacks section of the show, we talked about what Visa is doing to help empower women financially and the work that they did at this past year's Fashion Week. A very cool conversation. As always, we wrap it up with the rapid fire questions. And I will tell you, if you listen all the way through, Amanda and Robbie had given me a heads up that Doug is quite the Disneyland tour guide. So we got his pro tips on that as well. This was a fun conversation to have. I enjoyed getting to know Doug a little bit better. I hope you do too. So without further ado, I give you my conversation with Mr. Doug Leighton. Enjoy. Doug, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for agreeing to be one of our early guests.
Well, Randall, it's my honor to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
I was looking forward to this conversation. You have a couple very big fans inside CUInsight, and Amanda and Robbie. So they were giving me all kinds of let's just say some inside dirt and stuff like that to ask you. So
oh no,
right? But we'll still keep it PG. No, I'm just joking. I'm going to jump right into the questions. We could do an entire show, multiple shows on payments and the pace of change in technology and fintech. So I wanted to jump into a few of those right off the top. It seems like we're seeing a big push from Visa and you know, quite honestly, across the board on the kind of the switch for like the tap to pay. We're hearing a lot about mobile and wearable and all of that. Do you guys see tap to pay as kind of the bridge between the traditional card and moving over to mobile and wearables and everything else?
Yeah, tap to pay is definitely coming to the United States, and it's coming in a hurry. I know that within the payments universe over the last many years, tap to pay is not new. We talked about tap to pay 14 years ago, and it didn't come then. There's been lots of things that we would have said are coming quickly, but this one I truly believe is. And the notion that tap to pay is a bit of a bridge to some of these other technologies, particularly mobile, is accurate, and that tap to pay, as it continues to propagate, that will also generate more interest in mobile amongst credit union members. But it's not a short-term bridge. I mean, cards are going to be around for a long time, and consumers we believe, will adapt to the card-based tap to pay very quickly. And they will habituate to that, and they'll want to continue to use that. So it helps to spread the technology. It will also help to drive more mobile, but I wouldn't say it's a bridge to get from one to another. They will coexist for many years to come.
Okay. I'm a bit of a wanderlust. I love to travel. I'm taking off tomorrow, actually, so to Panama. And one of the things that I've noticed is that we seem to be a little bit behind on things like tap to pay. And I know we were for ever on EMV, from a lot of other places in the world. Is that a fair observation? And why is it that the U.S. seems to lag in this area, at least to me?
Yeah. Well, it's a couple of things. One, it is a fair statement to say that we've lagged, particularly with EMV and with tap to pay. And that is really driven in one sense because A, it's a very large market, B, it's a complicated market, particularly in debit. And C, it is extremely well developed from a telecommunications infrastructure standpoint. EMV took root in countries in which there wasn't the ability to do online authorizations, and fraud started to become a problem. The US didn't really have that problem, frankly, until the rest of the world went EMV, and then fraud started to migrate here. That's what drove the EMV conversion. And EMV then sets the landscape and drives the technology for tap to pay.
Okay.
So tap to pay naturally follows EMV. Other countries went EMV before us, driven by fraud concerns, and then adapted the tap to pay technology primarily because of the speed or lack thereof of an EMV transaction. We'll get EMV down to a second at some point. We all know it's more than that today, but tap to pay is always quick. It's always going to be even the fastest EMV. And so it was, in fact, it is a bit of a paradox. The fact that the US was so wired in the sense that we had great telecommunications infrastructure, we didn't have to leapfrog into mobile, which other countries did, or didn't have to deploy EMV as soon as other countries did because of the fraud implications. But your assessment is correct. And when you travel internationally, for example, you go to Australia, over 90% of all transactions there are tap to pay.
Yeah.
As a fun little story, we recently hosted an event in conjunction with the Super Bowl in Atlanta, and we were promoting tap to pay. And there was a 8-year-old boy that was there as a guest, and he was from Canada. And he looked to his father at one point and said, "Why are they talking so much about contactless and tap to pay? We just do that every day." And in Canada, it's a habit with folks. And that will quickly come here to the U.S. too.
It seems like it, Nick. Like I said, yeah, with you guys putting it all out there as well. So you're kind of forcing adoption there. But I mean, it makes sense. Like I said, I've seen it in other places. Does tap to pay create, and this may be a really basic question, but does it create new security challenges, or does it actually help alleviate the fraud side?
It helps alleviate it because a tap to pay transaction is a full EMV transaction. So it has the dynamic data elements that make EMV successful in combating counterfeit fraud.
Okay.
Tap to pay is the same. And the more transactions that then are tap to pay transactions, and one of the key things from the business case standpoint there is also it replaces cash. So it's taking cash out of people's wallets, and that's a good thing, right? Yeah. Cash is stolen and can't be replaced. So tap to pay not only is a more secure transaction than, say, a swipe would be, but it also is taking more cash out of the system, which is good for the financial service industry and good for consumers and for members because they have less cash on hand.
Absolutely. Absolutely. From what you just said, being top of wallet is still hugely important since, I think originally I was going to ask you this question more of as we were moving to mobile, so being top of phone also, but what do you see, I guess, as the biggest challenges currently for credit unions to stay or become top of wallet?
Well, I think about it in terms of e-commerce and online shopping, perhaps. What we typically see just on a mobile device is usually have most members have a single card in their mobile wallet. And so getting it in there is obviously important. Then you are by almost default top of wallet. But the area of more concern for credit unions should be the e-commerce space and card not present transactions. That's where all the growth is happening today. Our growth in card not present channel is 18 to 20% a year, whereas growth in face-to-face is low single digits, 2 to 5% a year. And getting your card, your account in the default position, so in other words, top of wallet, but in the default position, whether that is at an online store or even more importantly, as we move to Internet of Things and we actually are moving payment information into wearables or into your vehicle at some point, your card needs to be in there. Your payment credentials need to be in there because that's where all the growth is happening. And that's where, in many cases, you don't have the same level of flexibility that you might with a physical wallet. When you go to a retailer, a traditional retailer, and you open your wallet or open your purse and you see you've got 4 or 5 cards, it's pretty easy to choose one over the other. But when you are in an online environment or when you're in a Internet of Things environment, you're not likely to change that payment type. So being top of that device, being the default payment in any online store in which you're doing a lot of your shopping, that's vitally important. And credit unions need to be communicating to their members the value that their card brings and why it should be there. And whether that's rewards based, whether that's customer service based, what have you, that's where I counsel credit unions today is you need to be on your front foot, marketing day in and day out to your members about putting their payment credentials in that top of wallet position.
Yeah, You want to be in their Amazon, right?
Well, think how easy it is with Amazon and Amazon Prime. How often do you change your payment type when you can have one click?
Yeah.
Even more, if you are buying something with Alexa,
absolutely,
it doesn't ask you if you can. You just whatever's the default, that is what pays for any item that you purchase through Alexa.
Well, and even now, ordering through Whole Foods as well, you can just go have it delivered or pick it up or whatever it happens to be all through Amazon, right? So,
yep.
Whatever that card is. Yeah, for sure. How is Visa? You just said you counsel credit unions on that. How is Visa helping credit unions with this challenge?
Well, we can help in a variety of ways. Much of it is just consultation. It's working, it's individual account executives working with their counterparts at credit unions to discuss the fact that commerce is shifting to a card not present environment. And that brings different types of challenges from a marketing standpoint, but also importantly from an authorization standpoint, getting actually approved for that transaction. We work with credit unions to help improve their authorization rates in a card not present environment. And the other is the fact that debit cards are underutilized online as compared to credit cards.
Okay.
And communication there, working with credit unions to make sure that if there is fraud for any reason, that the member is reimbursed very quickly on that. So they don't go 4 or 5 days in which they will get reimbursed. There's zero liability. But if they have to wait 4 or 5 days, that's still a significant inconvenience as opposed to maybe making it a day or 36 hours. So it's really around improving the operational efficiency, but also in the messaging.
I remember a few years ago, one of my cards got hacked and it was a debit card. And it was interesting because it was towards the end of the month. And I remember thinking we actually had a conversation in the office about this, that with the amount of money that was taken out, if that would have been all that was, say, in there, and like I had rent due or something like that, and I wasn't fortunate enough to be able to cover it. I remember at the time it took 10 or 14 days. I'm like, this could have been like bouncing all kinds of payments for a lot of Americans. We've seen the savings rates, right? Like, so what you're saying there, I mean, that seems hugely important, or at least helping the members in some way make it through that time, right? Like while the
members will get made whole eventually,
right.
But making that as quick as possible so you don't go through the added inconvenience of checks bouncing, other things is important. And as more and more commerce moves online, more of the what you might term traditional types of things that people might buy with a debit card are now, you mentioned Whole Foods, right?
Yep.
And having Whole Foods delivered. Many people might traditionally pay for Whole Foods or any sort of grocery with a debit card with ready funds. We need to move those same percentages that they use in the face-to-face environment to the online environment so that credit unions can continue to be successful in that space.
That makes a lot of sense. I'd like to switch gears a little bit here and talk to something that I know for you is a kind of passion project. Amanda was telling me quite a bit actually about you bringing in kind of and mentoring young professionals into the payment space. Is this something that's, I guess would say, I know it's something that you're interested in. Is this also a Visa kind of movement, or is it just something that you're working on personally?
Yeah, and there's two aims to that.
Okay.
There's on the one hand, let's talk about what we're doing specifically with credit unions, and that's sponsoring Filene's Center of Excellence on the War for Talent. That's a 4-year sponsorship that we have struck with Filene. In conjunction with that, we also support the Crashers who crash the JC and lots of other events, and they're a great, just a wonderful resource for credit unions and something I get a lot of energy out of. And I believe that the credit union industry is just an amazing place for young people to build a career. And you see CUNA doing this very similar types of awareness building around credit union membership. Well, the Center of Excellence will hopefully replicate that around bringing young professionals into the credit union movement early in their careers and building their careers. Similarly, looking at the other aim of that is around the Visa side. A few years ago, Visa's standard job rec said 10 to 15 years payment experience. That was what we were looking for in just about any employee. And that created a working environment in which you had lots of seasoned professionals, to be sure, but maybe not the ideas that younger people might bring. Certainly, it didn't help with us from a diversity standpoint as well. And so we made a conscious effort to first of all, take that out of our job rec and start to actively recruit folks that were right out of college or a couple years out of college to bring them into Visa to help them grow their careers in our environment, which tends to be one in which you learn a lot. You learn a little bit about a lot of things, but you can also learn about the things that you may have a passion for, that you may find are particularly interesting and you want to further your career in. Then we do everything we can to ensure that folks continue to move up in the organization, even if they're moving out of the community account segment.
Okay.
And I'm really proud of the fact that just 2 years ago, we had 6 people in our San Francisco office that worked in the community account team. Right now, we're down to 1 because 5 of those folks moved into other roles within Visa, and they're still working there, and they're achieving promotions and they're contributing to the organization in another manner. And that's something that I'm particularly proud of.
That's pretty awesome. And what an opportunity, right? To come into such a great company and have all kinds of options and mobility there. Is that something you mentioned, just kind of changing the guidelines of what you're looking to hire?
Yeah.
Does that start with the recruiting hiring process, or is it something that's even, I guess, before that? And it sounds like, just I'm kind of thinking out loud here, but your work with Filene and with the Crashers, it's after people have already been hired to help move them along in their career.
Yeah, the thought with the War for Talent and the Crashers was a bit of a continuum. The initiative broadly is called Building the Next Generation of Credit Union Leaders. And it was meant to be, from an introductory standpoint, you'd have the Center of Excellence on the War for Talent. That would help to bring young people into the credit union movement and to help credit unions to provide opportunities that enabled them to succeed. And then the Crashers would be the next step of that, where Crashers have this opportunity to interact with senior executives, to participate in events in which they build a network and can further their careers in the credit union movement. And then lastly, what I did mention before is we also have a partnership with CUIs, and we support a number of CUIs educational forums, one of which is the CEO Institute. So while we made a 4-year commitment, and I certainly don't expect anybody to come in, become a Crasher, and then go to CUIs and learn about being a CEO all in 4 years. But the whole point is there was something on each step of the path where over a longer duration, you'd have hopefully more people coming in, building their careers, participating as a Crasher, maybe doing I3, and then going and polishing off their skills with working at CUIs.
It sounds like, I can hear it in your voice, that this is something that you find rewarding, working with the young part.
Yeah, it's not just rewarding, it's energizing, because being around just a diverse group of professionals spanning generations and hearing the interplay and hearing the ideas, it really is energizing. And one thing I mention to folks a lot is that I work in San Francisco when I'm not traveling, and I travel extensively, but I work in San Francisco and I live in San Mateo. Now, those are cities that both begin with San, and they're about 20 miles apart in the San Francisco Bay Area. But in the morning, it can take at least an hour to get to work because, traffic, Bay Area is congested. Sure don't like the hour getting there. And in fact, there's another office down the road for me that I could work at. There's an office we have in Foster City. I can get there in 3 minutes. But the office in Foster City does not have the energy. It does not have the spirit that the San Francisco office does because Foster City office just doesn't have that many people working in it. And most of our younger talent is working in San Francisco. And so while I don't like the drive, Once I get there, I love working there. I love to just see the spirit of collaboration and all the ideas that happen almost organically because you get a bunch of folks together that have different life experiences, bringing that to the office. And ultimately, they're just making Visa a better place to work. And credit unions can do the exact same.
I just made a note. I in the next part of the show, I want to circle back to that a little bit. I think it really leads into a leadership question that I have of you. But before I move on, there was one other thing that I saw while doing research for this episode that Visa was working on. And it was a blog post I read on your guys' site about the work at Fashion Week and talking about empowering women to talk about money. Could you tell us a little bit about the findings of the survey that Visa commissioned? I'll link to the blog post because I found it fascinating just on the idea of talking about money.
Yeah. And the whole notion of that around She's Next, empowered by Visa, and also conversations that you can find on the visa.com website about money is changing is all around freeing up the conversation about money and not making it a taboo topic. and also providing opportunities and providing a forum for women to become entrepreneurs, to take their ideas and to put them into action as entrepreneurs. And this is not just a U.S. initiative for us. This is something that we're looking at globally as part of our social impact platform, is to invest in micro and small businesses, particularly those that are led by women, to help enable their success. So there's a ton of information about that on visa.com. And it is something that you're going to see more of both here in the United States and throughout the globe as we continue to promote that effort.
Is there, and maybe you can send me these afterwards, if there's specific resources that you think people should maybe go to first on that? Because I think we're going to see a lot of interest on what you guys are doing there. Is there anything, I guess, more specifically with credit unions that maybe Visa is either helping with or can help with or has the resources to help start, foster, move along that conversation?
Yeah, we have. So we have worked very closely with Filene on a Reaching Minority Households Incubator.
Okay.
And we did with that, we tested 5 products with over 40 credit unions throughout the country. The 2 that emerged from the incubator and are in production, and we're continue to seek partners to deploy, are around micro and small business. And so one is I-10 lending to folks without a social security number, and the other is around micro loans to enable small and micro businesses. And so there's a full playbook that we are glad to share with any credit union to help that financial inclusion activity. And that, of course, is applicable to anyone, but it's one of the very specific things that we've done with credit unions. And candidly, we're looking for banks to help out too. Credit unions tend to be a more willing partner in these sorts of initiatives, but we're looking for bank sponsors and bank partners to come in and deploy these so that we can continue to drive that initiative, again, around small and micro business.
That's cool stuff. I'll get all that information from you and we'll link to that in the show notes. So that's really cool. This summer, I'm going with a group of DEs to Kenya, actually. And I know a big part of that is micro lending. And it's something I'm geeked up about. I've not been to Africa and I've not done one of these international credit union trips before. So I couldn't be more excited.
Fantastic. Yeah, we're hoping also to do some work with the World Council of Credit Unions on a similar initiative, taking it to Kenya and working with the SACCOs there. So something else that we're excited about and looking forward to doing some work in the latter part of spring leading up to the World Council's next annual meeting, which is in July.
Yep, absolutely. I'm sure you'll see some of our crew there. So that's for sure.
Great.
I'd like to move on to the second part of the show, talk a little bit about leadership and life hacks, a little background on you, let people get to know you a little bit better. How long have you been working in the payment space, and what inspired you to make Visa your career?
Yeah. So I've been at Visa for 21 years now, and I joined Visa after I went to graduate school, which I went at nights here in the Bay Area. I worked at Wells Fargo Bank before that, but not in any sort of payments capacity, other than the fact I did customer service for a couple of years when I was in college, and I was a teller. But while I was at graduate school, I learned about Visa specifically, and the unique formation of Visa, the fact that it was an association of member banks and credit unions, and the fact that Visa was actually a relatively small company that actually had a very powerful brand. When I started at Visa, there was no more than 5,000 people spread out across the entire globe. Most people would think that number was 10 or 20 times that because of just the scale that it brought. So I was fortunate to come. Remember before I said that our standard job recs had 5 to 10 years payment card experience. Well, I didn't have that, but I was fortunate to get a role when I was younger. And for me, it's been a wonderful place to build a career and to feel that I'm having an impact.
Was there something specific about what you learned about Visa before you came to work there that inspired you to go, that's the place for me?
I think it was the notion that it was a small company with big company resources.
Okay.
So the notion that you could make a difference at Visa, I got to continue to refine this, but of those 5,000 people that work there, 3,000, maybe 3,500 were in a technical capacity. They were the people that were managing the switch. That meant that you had about 1,500 people that were either in product, sales, or marketing throughout the globe. And you could navigate through that quite easily to build consensus around products that you were supporting or other types of initiatives that you were seeking to deploy. And so I liked that notion. I also did particularly like the notion of it being an association, much like credit unions. That was a cooperative, different in structure, but still cooperative. And I like that. Now, of course, we've subsequently become a public company and we have the same pressures that public companies have. Perhaps it's one of the reasons why I gravitate so much towards credit unions, because I like the cooperative nature, the not-for-profit structure that credit unions enjoy.
I was just going to say, has the inspiration changed over the past 21 years?
The inspiration hasn't necessarily changed, but boy, payments sure have. And that is that when I started, payments was a sleepy little part of what banks and credit unions did. There was MasterCard, of course, and there was Discover and American Express out there. But for the most part, we were just we switched transactions. We built a big brand. We worked very diligent on acceptance and all of those things. But there wasn't an awful lot of innovation, let's just say. And now you look at it, and the pace of change is so fast, and there are so many players. Right now, I'm in part of a 2-day meeting I stepped out of, and we've been talking about competitors, and we've been talking about new entrants, and the list is seemingly infinite. And many of those seek to disrupt. Many of those seek to enable credit unions. But the whole notion of payments has migrated so much from just this, like I said, sleepy little part of banks and credit unions. Most people didn't know Visa from the fact, other than the fact it was on their card. Yep. And never understood the size or scale that Visa had. Now there are hundreds, if not thousands, of companies that are out there in this industry, and it just creates a really vibrant community and lots of innovation and, again, potential disruption. But we like to think that we can partner that in ways that can help to further credit unions and to help to keep them competitive.
Do you see, with your work with credit unions and really community financial institutions across the board, do you see a current belief that you think will significantly change over the foreseeable future?
Well, I don't want to belabor tap to pay, but that's something that every credit union should at least be thinking about, because it's going to come sooner than you might think based on our previous predictions about new technologies. The other, I think, is, again, it's not something super innovative, but it's credit cards. It's doing more to create a more segmented credit card offering for your members. Credit unions that have stepped away from credit cards being a lending tool and more to a spending tool, with segments that would include affluent to potentially even secure cards, I think is something that's going to be necessary for credit unions to continue to service their members' financial needs. We talk a lot about millennials and that the size of that generation, and they tend to be more debit centric. Well, our research shows that they make the transition to credit largely. And again, this is not 100%, but they make the transition to credit just as previous generations did. When they start to own homes, when they begin families, the need for credit exists. It just happens later.
Okay.
Because those types of life activities are happening later for younger generations. So I think credit unions need to be there and helping to support their members with credit offerings so that they're not getting it from other providers. And, as those other providers then have a potentially, an into their members' spending, and that could potentially lead to other products. I want to make sure that credit unions are there providing competitive products to their members so that they can service all of their members' needs.
Is there also, and maybe this is, kind of just old school stuff, or I'm not sure where it falls on the life cycle, but is that also like rewards cards and cashback cards and things like that as well? Because,
sure. I
mean, I know as somebody who, like I mentioned earlier, that travels, I'd be crazy not to use a travel rewards card for a lot of this stuff, right? So
right. And so, so that's what I'm talking about, the segmentation. And a simple segmentation would be an affluent card with travel rewards or a cashback program, maybe a rate card. So a card that is more of a lending vehicle that you promote the rate, although that should be a variable rate, not a fixed. And then perhaps a secure card, like an entry level card for members, which is important not only from a financial inclusion standpoint, but a thoughtful secure card strategy will lead to unsecured and continue to grow people's credit wellness, but also be able to grow your engagement with that member. So credit is, important on the one hand. Again, it's just about putting a competitive program. You don't have to go head to head with the big guys on that. You don't have to beat them on rewards because you're going to beat them on customer service. And then, of course, the other thing, too, is around digital and ensuring that credit unions have the capabilities around digital. Again, looking at younger generations that like to be able to engage with the credit union across a variety of different platforms. That type of functionality is going to be important for future success.
I find this stuff so interesting, so we can keep going there. But I want to talk a little bit about your leadership style. When you were talking earlier about driving into San Francisco to kind of be around that energy, and about the people on your team that have moved on to other things, how would you classify your leadership style?
Yeah, I guess I would think about it with three things, maybe just three quick notions. One is empathy. It's being able to put yourself in others' shoes. And this is true not just amongst your team members directly, but throughout your working life, is taking pause to understand what motivates other folks. What perspective may they have that's different from yours so that you can help to either bond with or find common ground. So empathy is one. The other is, as we've been talking about, I think the job of a great manager is to find somebody's skills, help develop those skills, to mentor on where their weaknesses are, and to grow them into roles that very likely are outside of your organization. You never want to be the manager that keeps your best people in your org because you know that they're the best people. You should be seeking 100% of your team to find the next opportunity. And that may be in the community account group, it may be elsewhere. And the last is a pretty simple one. That's just saying thank you. It's just recognition and taking a moment to say thank you. And whether that's on an email, whether that's in person, whether it's as part of a conference call, I try to do that. And it's a simple recognition, but it is meaningful. I certainly appreciate it when people say thank you to me, and I believe that others appreciate it too. Those are the three things I think are top of my list.
I think it's very interesting. Empathy is one of my favorite words. So is that something that you, as a manager, leader, always had, or is it something that you've learned, or it's blossomed more over time with experience?
Probably, yeah. Well, I like the blossomed over time. I think that's probably pretty accurate. And it really was, for me, it was fully developed, let's just say, or to the extent that I think I possess it, was when I was constantly negotiating deals. And I was negotiating a lot of contracts, and I was working in a different part of our organization, but in the organization that supports co-branded credit cards. So cards like the United card or the Southwest Airlines card, those sorts of things. And so when you're negotiating these contracts, and these are pretty large dollar sum contracts, recognizing what is motivating the person that's sitting on the other side of the table from you. And we would do we would have these three-way conversations because there'd be a financial institution, there'd be Visa, and then there'd be the retailer or the airline or the co-brand partner. And sort of triangulating on the different motivations and what was important to one versus another it's helpful in driving a contract to completion, but it's also very helpful in driving a contract that respects everybody else's view and has a situation in which nobody feels that they were wronged or they were muscled. And those are the relationships that grow. Those are the relationships that are successful and the ones that lead to future contracts. And so it was within that around how to better negotiate contracts. I think I developed that skill, and now I translate it to working with our clients, our credit union clients, as well as with team members and with all of the folks I interact with at Visa.
Is there something that your team has heard you say so many times they can finish your sentence?
Yeah, I think so. We're always working to improve the quality of life at Visa. And that's, whether it's just tools or whether it's recognition, what have you. And so I say a lot, and this is kind of goes to saying thank you, is I thank people for making Visa a better place to work. And so I would suspect that that's probably something they've heard. I hope they've heard a lot.
You hope yeah.
Because as folks taking the extra effort to participate on an employee resource group or to do something to prepare a list of contacts within Visa that can be distributed through our Microsoft Teams site that helps all of our account executives be more efficient. I mean, those are the little things that just make Visa a better place to work.
That's awesome. Is there something in the if you think back to your early days, maybe at Visa, a mistake that you made or that you see other young leaders make, maybe people that are first moving into management for the first time, that you see it just comes with the territory, right?
Yeah. Well, there's been plenty of mistakes I've made over the years. I'll tell you one thing that I think is really important, and that is contributing early. This is kind of obscure, but contributing early to your 401k plan is something that I tell every person when they're first starting here and they're first starting to draw a salary. It can be tough to say, hey, 10% of that should go into your savings plan. But once you put it in there, you forget it and you adjust your spending, and before you know it, you've got you're starting to build a nest egg. And as we all know, the beauty of compounding is take advantage of the benefit that the credit union is providing you and start to contribute early
and often, right? Yeah, get going. I heard this question on another podcast, so I actually just added it. Do you have any memorable failures, something that just didn't turn out the way at the time you wanted it to, that in hindsight turned into a future success?
Yeah. The one I would think about is, this was back when I was at Wells Fargo. There was two things that happened. One is I was making a pitch to the board of directors of a large company in San Francisco for some retirement planning. And there was a unique situation with the fact there were brothers working there, and I won't get into the situation, but needless to say, I made a pretty significant mistake in how I created these retirement accounts. No financial impact whatsoever, but just the accounting was messed up. And that was identified in the meeting. So you have one brother looking and goes, wow, my number's 0. And the other brother's looking at it and goes, my number's twice as big as it's supposed to be. So I immediately recognized, fessed up to the mistake, and went back to the office, fixed the issue, went back to the client later that day. And I think what I learned with that was, one is, what does Bob the Builder say? Measure twice, cut once.
Yeah.
Double check, triple check, quadruple check, those types of things, so they make sure that they're right. But secondly, it is how you respond to adversity that ultimately helps to build the relationship. Mistakes happen.
Yep.
At Visa, mistakes happen. Systems rarely, but they do go down. And it's how you respond to that can actually turn lemons into lemonade. It's how you respond to adversity. It's how you communicate to your clients, and accepting responsibility that can actually make a negative situation into one in which you're building equity as opposed to burning equity. And I mean personal equity in that case.
Absolutely. Right. Yep. No, I love that. I think it loosely relates, but I remember early in my career, one of the greatest answers that I learned to give is, I don't know, but I'll find out. Right. Like that idea that people don't mind if you mess up, if you make it better, and how you handle it. You take responsibility. People don't mind if you don't know. If you tell them you're going to get them the answer, go get it and find it. They like it. Right. But it's that not having to know, not having to be everything to everybody, I guess.
Well, and definitely the responsibility part too.
Absolutely.
That you have to take it. When you deflect, that's somebody else's problem, people can see right through that.
Yep, they sure do. Has there been a piece of advice, really ties into this, that you've just carried through your entire career, something you find yourself going back to?
Yeah. I had a mentor when I was in the co-brand group named Melissa Beidler, and she was the one that I think taught me a lot about putting myself in the shoes of the client, or putting myself in the entity that we were trying to create the contract with. And she also had a saying, which is not that unusual, but I do use it all the time, and that's, you catch more flies with honey than with vinegar. And so I think it is just being approachable, trying to find that common ground. For me, I think that's contracts do not need to be win-lose. We joke, win-win is a really tired cliche, but you can find those situations. And I think that is generally driven by this notion of catching more flies with honey than with vinegar.
I love it. Do you have anything that you do when you're running into a wall, like coming up against a problem, hacks that you have just to take a fresh look at it or figure out something on the other side?
It goes back to empathy. It goes back to taking the time to say, what might be motivating the situation? And I'm using this fairly narrowly defined as you're in a negotiation, or even you're working in collaboration with somebody on a project and it's not going as well. It's trying to identify what is that other person thinking about you or about the issue, and then once you have that and you have the perspective around it, I think resolution becomes much easier.
So another kind of one of these scratch my own itch questions. And I'll tell you, this comes from us being we passed 10 years at CUInsight, and that idea of keeping the message fresh. Obviously, Visa as a brand has been around for a long time, but the question I've been asking a lot of people is more specifically, individually, you work with a lot of credit unions, a lot of community financial institutions. Is there something that you do to keep your message fresh when you're talking to people?
I think and with credit unions particularly, it's being there. It's taking the time to be at their offices. It's taking the time to be at events like GAC, other gatherings where credit unions come together at conferences. And it's also then it's keeping abreast of what is impactful to credit unions and making sure that you're bringing in solutions to them. So it's one thing to say, we're at a conference or we're speaking about this one thing, but you can't just keep speaking about that one thing. You've got to evolve that message and continue to be, otherwise it does become stale. But I think the key thing is it's that constant commitment to being there, being out in the field, being in a credit union leader's office, or like we'll be doing in a couple of weeks out in GAC.
Understood. Yep. I think, in the credit union space, people like to see each other, right? So it's building those relationships. You have a free day, nothing on the calendar. What passions do you have outside of payments and Visa? What do you do to recharge? What does work-life balance look like for Doug?
Well, I do love watching sports. So I think it's my wife's grandfather once said that he doesn't watch any TV unless it involves a ball. And that's probably me at the same time. So whether it's basketball or football and living in the Bay Area, we're blessed to have 2 baseball teams. We also have 2 football teams for at least one more year. But so the other is I'm perhaps foolishly, I've signed up to do the AIDS Life Cycle, which is a 545-mile bike ride between San Francisco and Los Angeles to raise funds for the San Francisco AIDS Foundation. And so a lot of my time on the weekends now is sitting on stationary bikes or getting out and riding my bike to build up the stamina to do that long ride.
That is amazing. Is that over what period
6
of time?
days.
6 days. Okay.
145 miles.
Wow. That's impressive.
Yeah.
We'll put a link to that as well down there so people can
Easy to talk about it now. When it's all done, it may be different.
Yeah, well, that's amazing. I also heard, I'm just going to throw this out there, that you're quite the Disneyland tour guide. So any tips there that you could give if somebody's planning a trip to Disney? What's the pro tip?
I do love Disneyland. And I think I have a 17-year-old and a 14-year-old son, and I'm pretty sure I like going there more than they do, even when they're younger. And the thing is, plan your day. If I was going to do it, plan your day, take advantage of any of the fast passes, I think there's a Disney Max Pass. It's like $5 more, and you can use an app once you're in the park to plan the rides. So you really do go with a plan.
Planning is important.
The last time we went, my wife gets a little frustrated with me sometimes because park opens at 8, so we get there at 7:30. So we're in line, ready for the park, and then there's a plan. You go to Space Mountain first, and then you get a fast pass and all that stuff. And my wife at one point said, "Hey, can we just have a leisurely day at Disneyland and not run back and forth all these things?" I'm like, you got to have your head on a swivel here. You got to. And if you look at a fast pass and it's available when you can get it, then you get it.
You get it right then.
I do love it there. It's just and I did, have a great time when I went with your team. We were at the NUCUSO conference.
Yeah, that's what it was, right? The NUCUSO conference was out there, and I think Amanda and Robbie, Amanda was like, ask him about Disney. The guy just rocks Disney. So, all right. I want to be respectful of your time. I move into the last part. These are rapid fire questions. The questions are rapid. Your answers don't have to be, but can you remember the first time you got in trouble, like memorable trouble?
Oh yeah. Some memorable, I'm not going to share them, but I do think though, it's kind of interesting. Younger kids today, there's so much monitoring of that. There's Find My Phone and there's cameras in houses, and we didn't have that growing up. Right, so I think it was easier to get in trouble when we were younger than it is for particularly my children.
I am so glad I was not able to be tracked or watched when the parents weren't around, right? So do you have any daily routines that if you don't do, your day just feels off?
Yeah, not really. I think the one thing that where my day feels off is if things are sort of messy, and whether that's messy in the house or messy at my desk, I almost have to stop and clean it up. I think most people would say you should do this, but I have a super long to-do list, and and things need to be on there and organized, or else it's a little too chaotic for me.
Do you use like an old notebook, or do you Evernote, or how do you keep your to-do list?
I actually use like Microsoft Teams, like Slack.
Yep.
And then I keep it there. But over the weekend, I'll print it out just so it's like a scribble notes on it just so I don't have to get to my phone.
When you're away.
Yeah.
What's the random question? What's the best album of all time? The one you don't skip a song.
I think probably Eagles, Hotel California would be one. Another, probably the most impactful record for me growing up was the band called The Tubes, the Completion Backwards Principle. They were a Bay Area band. It was the first concert I ever saw.
Oh, that's awesome.
It was really, yeah. So that's another one that that one is transportative. Like I listen to it and I just feel like I'm a 16-year-old driving with the windows open in the car, and it's summertime and you have no problems.
It's a beautiful thing what music can do and where it can take us, right? And we're going to put together a heck of a playlist at the end of the year. So I'm a reader. We have a stack of books in our house, and it's with Amazon makes it too easy. So when books are recommended, right? Is there a book that over your life you either gifted or that you recommended often for people to read?
Yeah, I was thinking about this, and there's a leadership book called It's Your Ship.
Okay.
It's by a naval captain. His name is Michael Abrashoff. He's a speaker. I've seen him speak, and he talked about lessons around empowerment and how he inverted the sort of chain of command in the ship that he had taken over. So it wasn't everything top down, but in fact, listening closely to the folks on the ship to find the best ways to do things, and recognizing that it is your team members that know the answers. Your team members know what needs to get done. And sometimes as a leader, you don't, because you're not as close to it. And so the lessons around listening to your team and acting on your team's recommendations are spelled out in that book. And so I have gifted that book to many people. I find it's an easy read, and there are a number of really great leadership disciplines that are included in it.
For some reason, I think I may have seen him speak over the years.
He's done the tour.
He's done the tour. Yeah.
I think I saw him at a co-op conference once.
Okay, that would make sense. When you were talking about that, I remembered, and I don't know if this was him, but it really sounded like him. And I remember doing this. This must have been 3-4 years ago, coming back to the office afterwards. But it was like that question of when somebody would ask me something, just asking them back, what would you do?
Yeah.
And he's like, the amount of times, and if it was him who said it, if it wasn't, it was somebody similar, that was the amount of times that you're going to go, they know what to do. And it might be different than what you would do, but it's probably still a good result, and just giving people that latitude, right? Very cool. We will link to that book.
And if it wasn't co-op, it was a NAFQ. I don't want to short somebody if I saw him.
If it was somebody, right? Yeah, we'll figure it out. Maybe somebody will tell us who it was too, and we can put it in the show notes. So, but we'll put the book there for sure. There's a question I don't send. When you hear this word success, who is the first person that comes to mind?
Hear the word success. I guess something like LeBron James, probably, which was crushed. I'm a Warriors fan, but okay. I see this guy as somebody who's taken advantage of his gifts, but also worked extraordinarily hard to take everything to the next level. And, you see him, whether it's on the basketball court, or whether it's in some of the things he's doing from as far as social impact and of course, the work that he's doing as he looks to his post-basketball career, probably in movies or in television. And, I see somebody who he's not successful just because he stumbled into it. He's successful because he worked really hard.
That's a great answer. Last question. And again, I thank you for being on the show and agreeing to be on the show. It's been a lot of fun and taking time out of your day when you're at meetings. Do you have any final asks of our listeners today, or final thoughts you want to share?
I do. I do have two things I want to share.
All right.
One is business related. Another is just more related to the credit union movement. So the business related one, it gets back to what we first started our conversation on. It's around tap to pay. Tap to pay is coming to the U.S. Make sure that you are thinking about it. Not saying reissue all your portfolio as contactless, but have a strategy, have a plan, because it's going to happen and your members are going to start asking for the cards sooner rather than later. The other is make sure that you have a really good top of wallet strategy, things we also talked about at the beginning of the show. Make sure that you're communicating to your members about having their payment credentials in the mobile device in the default position, that you're enabled for tokens when it comes to moving your payment credentials into a car or a watch or whatever. So that's sort of on the business side. On the sort of ongoing health and wellness of the credit union movement, I would leave people say, like, you are all recruiters. Everybody that listens to this podcast is a recruiter for the credit union movement, and you should be always thinking in those terms. It's one of the lessons that we have coming out of the Center of Excellence on the War for Talent. And so we're all recruiters, and so we should always be looking to bring new people of any generation, but certainly new people with new ideas and lots of diverse ideas and diverse backgrounds into the credit union movement, because that will just make all credit unions collectively much stronger.
Doug, that is the perfect way to wrap it up. Thank you again so much. If people have additional questions of you, the social channels, email, what's the best way to reach you?
Email's great.
Okay.
It's just my last name, Leighton@visa.com.
Awesome.
Or LinkedIn. Certainly, please link in, and we'd love to connect that way.
That is fantastic. We'll link to both of those, everything we talked about today.
The last thing I say, can I add one thing, and that is also visit our website. We have visa.com/community issuers is a website dedicated to financial institutions that are part of our community account segment. And inside you can meet the entire team that works in the community account group, but also learn about the various things that Visa can do to help you be successful.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Doug. I look forward to seeing you at GAC, and I'm sure at a bunch of other events. So thanks again for taking the time, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Well, thank you very much. It's been my pleasure. And you too. Have a great day.
Thank you.